Ava, I thought we were just pretending to be a couple. How did we end up getting married? Ava Reed pulled out two crisp, red-covered marriage certificates and dangled them in front of my face with a triumphant smirk. Who said anything about pretending? We've got the license. This is the real deal. Before I could even process what was happening, she had me backed into a corner. And now, she said, her voice dropping, it's time we settled the score about what happened back then. I stared at the playful yet menacing glint off her canines, my gaze darting away nervously. What are you talking about? What score? Still playing dumb, huh? She grabbed my arm. All right, inside with you. Let your big sister refresh your memory. Leo, this isn't working. I think we should break up. They say college graduation is breakup season, but I never thought it would happen to me. After packing my bags, my heart weighed heavy in my chest. I didn't linger in the city I had called home for 4 years. I just got on the first bus back to Denver. I spent 2 days in a catatonic state until my best friend, my ride or die since kindergarten, physically dragged me out of bed. Walking into the restaurant, I hesitated at the entrance to the private dining room. The woman sitting inside radiated such an Arctic chill that I wanted to turn and run. My friendship with the Reed siblings, Ava and Ben, was long and complicated. Their family went through a rough patch when we were kids, moving into the house across the street from mine when I was 6. We were inseparable until I was 18, when their family fortune turned around and they moved away. But we never lost touch. I'd spent holidays at their new place, and their parents always loved me, treating me like a second son. Things started to change, though. I remember FaceTiming Ava once and casually mentioning I had a girlfriend. She went silent for a long time. When I asked what was wrong, she finally said she liked someone who lived far away and didn't know if he'd stay faithful. I was shocked. I told her with all the conviction of a clueless college kid that any guy would be a fool to ever cheat on a girl like her. She didn't say anything. Just gave me the strangest look. After that, she pulled away. Every time I saw her, she wrapped herself in that same icy demeanor. We drifted apart. So I had no idea why Ben thought it was a good idea to invite his sister tonight. This dinner was going to be awkward. Sit, Ava commanded. One sharp, cold word. It felt like anything more would be a waste of her time. You broke up? Ben asked with his usual lack of subtlety, noticing my mopey silence during the meal. I just nodded and told him what happened. Across the table, Ava's fork paused midair for a fraction of a second before she resumed eating as if nothing had happened. 3 years, man? I muttered, swirling the whiskey in my glass. And in the end, she says our backgrounds are too different. Just a nice way of saying she thinks my family doesn't have enough money. Stop wallowing, Ben said, clapping a heavy hand on my shoulder. You need a job to keep you busy. Hey, my sister needs an assistant. You should give it a shot. My head snapped up to look at Ava. Her face was a perfect, unreadable mask. I was just a guy with a degree from a decent state school. Finding a good job wasn't going to be easy. Working as an assistant to the CEO of Reed Industries was a dream opportunity. Ava, could I? I asked, forcing myself to meet her frosty gaze. I couldn't stand the thought of being a deadbeat living at home. She delicately blotted her lips with a napkin, her eyes finally settling on me. For some reason, she always looked at me like I'd personally wronged her, which made me feel guilty, even though I had no idea what I'd done. Be at the office Monday morning. That was it. She didn't say another word on the matter. After she left for a work emergency, I finally felt like I could breathe again. That weekend, Ben and I did what we do best, sprawled out on my couch playing video games. We're cut from the same cloth. If we can lie down, we won't sit. And if we can stay home, we won't go out. He has virtually no other friends, and I'm only slightly better off. The only person I could really talk to was this guy whose weight was in a constant battle with his 5'9" frame. Ben was just lazy. I might be a homebody, but at least I worked out, maintaining a respectable six-pack. On Monday, I walked into the sleek glass and steel lobby of Reed Industries wearing a new budget-friendly suit. My life as a corporate drone had officially begun. The silver lining was that I got to spend my days watching Ava, Reed with her stunning face and the killer. Figure she showed off in tailored black pantsuits. My job was essentially to cater to her every whim. Luckily, I knew all her preferences, so I was actually pretty good at it, and it seemed Ava wasn't as cold as she appeared. She'd let my minor slip-ups slide without a word. Skipped breakfast again? I asked a month later, setting a container on her desk. I made you an omelet. You need to eat. I had figured out that her icy attitude was reserved exclusively for me. I couldn't understand why, so I decided to chip away at it by taking exceptionally good care of her. We'd been friends for too long for things to be this strained. With Ben as my inside source, I knew she often missed breakfast because she had a habit of hitting snooze one too many times, wanting to earn my salary. I started waking up 30 minutes earlier to make her something. Ava stared at the container for a moment. Then, after a brief hesitation, she put down her files and began to eat. I waited patiently until she was done, then cleared the dishes, placed a hot mug of coffee beside her, and retreated to my own desk. I never expected my desk would be in the same office as hers. A little while later, I glanced up and saw the corner of Ava's mouth curve into a faint, beautiful smile. The sight of her radiant face made my mind wander. There was no denying she was gorgeous. I'd had a massive crush on her when we were younger, a secret I kept until my ex-girlfriend pursued me in college. Back then, I figured someone like Ava was completely out of my league, so I buried those feelings. The days rolled on and I settled into a comfortable routine, making a solid $8,000 a month plus bonuses. On weekends, I'd hang out with Ben, gaming. Lately, we'd gotten into the idea of camping, looking up gear, and planning a trip. But before we could even buy a tent, Ava gave me a top-of-the-line camping setup for my birthday. Ava, you're the best. You're like the sister I never had. Aren't you forgetting something? Huh? Forgetting what? Overjoyed, I almost threw my arms around her, catching myself just in time. Ava's question, however, left me completely baffled. A complicated look crossed her face before she pulled Ben aside to talk in hushed tones. I eagerly unzipped the bags, excited to figure out how to assemble all the expensive new gear. Dude, I need you to do me a favor, Ben said when he returned. Anything, man. You know I've got your back. I thumped my chest in a gesture of loyalty. I need you to ask my sister out. What? Fake? It's fake, he quickly clarified. My parents have been on her case nonstop. You know, Ava's getting older and they're constantly nagging her about finding a boyfriend. I hesitated, remembering what Ava had told me about liking someone else. Was this some kind of cheesy rom-com plot? Was I supposed to be the stand-in? The more time I spent with her, the harder it was to keep my old feelings buried. I didn't want to get my heart broken. Pretending was one thing, but this couldn't be a long-term solution. Our parents knew each other too well. This could get messy. I'll quintuple your salary. Ava's cool voice cut in from behind me. Plus, you know that vintage motorcycle you've been eyeing? Do a good job and it's yours. This new offer was seriously tempting. Okay, but how long would this pretending have to go on for? I asked, needing some kind of end date. Not long. We'll play it by ear, she said nonchalantly, as if convincing her parents would be a piece of cake. I relaxed, figuring she had it under control. The three of us spent the next hour huddled in my living room, plotting until my mom called us for dinner. As I walked them out later, Ava fell into step beside me, her hand unexpectedly looping through my arm. I tensed for a second, but didn't pull away. We'd agreed the performance had to be convincing for her parents, which meant mine would inevitably find out too. And gestures like this were part of the deal. My mom, watching from the doorway, didn't seem to react. We'd been close since we were kids, and I worked for her now, so it wasn't that strange. It was just an arm link. Nothing more. You're really getting into character, huh? I whispered, still not used to this kind of contact from her. Even when we were close, her affection was usually expressed with a playful punch. Oh, stop it, she cooed, giving my shoulder a light tap. I looked at her, stunned. The ice around her had melted, replaced by a warm, flirtatious smile. I glanced back at my mom, who was staring at us, her eyes wide as she processed the scene. The next morning at the office, I arrived with a single red rose in one hand and a thermal container in the other. Well now, Leo, who are you trying to woo? Don't tell me it's little old me, Brenda, a notoriously friendly colleague from the marketing department, teased as she passed my desk. I'd love to, Brenda, but I don't think your husband would approve, I shot back with a grin. I'd learned quickly that she loved to joke around. Inside Ava's office, I placed a small vase by her monitor, filled it with water, and set up the elaborate breakfast I'd made. If she was paying me this much, I was going to give her the full experience. When Ava walked in right on time at 8 a.m. sharp, I handed her the rose. She seemed taken aback, surprised by my directness. "Your Highness." "Your breakfast is served," I said with a theatrical bow, pulling out her chair and gesturing to the heart-shaped omelet I'd meticulously prepared. "I'm paying you all that extra money for this?" she asked, her tone dripping with disdain, but the slight upward twitch of her lips gave her away. She was all tough on the outside. "This is just a humble breakfast," I said, "but I was wondering if my princess would be interested in seeing a movie tonight." I had a plan. All this extra cash was going right back into wooing her. We were old friends after all. This was me helping her out. Ava placed the rose in the vase and picked up a file, ready to start her day. "You're the one who manages my schedule, Leo. Do I look like I have a free evening anytime soon?" My face flushed. I had completely forgotten. For the next 3 days, she was swamped with the massive Westgate development project she'd been preparing for months. "That's what I'm here for," I recovered quickly. "In the interest of our date, I've decided to help you clear your schedule. We'll make time." And so I dove headfirst into the misery of actual intense work. I spent over an hour getting my head around the entire project proposal, then started cross-referencing every single data point. We ate lunch at our desks, and by 10 that night, we still weren't finished. "Okay, that's enough for tonight," Ava said, rubbing her temples to ease the headache. Dazed and exhausted, I looked up, hearing her signal. The end of the day, I started organizing the files. "Ava, it's too late for a movie now. We both have to be up early tomorrow." Ava's movements hitched for a split second, and her expression turned cold again. "Fine." With that one word, she walked out of the office. Normally, she'd wait for me. She was angry again. I racked my brain trying to figure out what I'd done wrong. We'd barely even spoken all day. How did I manage to piss her off? The next few days were a blur of overtime, until finally the project was officially greenlit. Everyone was exhausted. Ava announced to the team, "Go home and get some rest. We'll have the celebration dinner tomorrow night." Once everyone else had left, Ava grabbed my arm without a word. The storm clouds gathering around her made me wonder if it was that time of the month. When we finally parked and got out of the car, I realized we were at a movie theater. So she had wanted to see a movie all along and had deliberately postponed the party for it. A bold theory formed in my mind, but I didn't dare confirm it. What if I was just flattering myself? We found seats in the back and the movie started, some romance flick. During a particularly steamy scene, I noticed couples all around us holding hands and getting cozy. I felt a light touch on my hand, which was resting on the armrest. I glanced over, but Ava was sitting perfectly straight, her eyes fixed on the screen. The dim light made it impossible to read her expression, so I turned back to the movie. My heart was hammering against my ribs. The atmosphere, the scene on the screen, it was all sending my imagination into overdrive. The faint, pleasant scent of her perfume wasn't helping. Then I felt it again. Another soft touch. Her hand was now on the armrest too, just inches from mine. I stared at her delicate, pale fingers, and an overwhelming urge to take her hand washed over me. Before I could act, her hand moved, her fingers lacing through mine. "Is this your idea of making a move?" she whispered, her voice laced with sarcasm. The teasing tone was enough to cool my racing heart, so this was just part of her plan. Another scene in our act, I didn't say anything, just let her hold my hand. I closed my eyes, deciding it was better not to watch the movie and let my mind wander. The exhaustion from days of overtime hit me like a wave, and before I knew it, I was asleep. When I woke up, the theater was empty and the credits had long since rolled. Ava's jacket was draped over me, and its familiar scent made me reluctant to move. Realizing everyone was gone, I shot up and handed her the jacket. It was only then that I noticed I was still tightly holding her hand. I quickly let go, looking at her apologetically, but she acted as if nothing had happened and simply led me out of the theater. "Hey, I'm really sorry about that. I was just so wiped out," I mumbled as we walked. "It's fine," she said, her voice surprisingly gentle. "I was the one who dragged you here." I don't know which of us started it, but somewhere on the way home, we began talking about the old days. The conversation flowed effortlessly, one story leading to another, and we talked the entire way back. When I finally collapsed into my bed, I found myself replaying our conversation. A smile on my face. My mind was completely filled with her. I tossed and turned all night. The next evening at the company's celebration dinner, I was still running on fumes. Goaded on by a few colleagues, I drank more than I should have. The next thing I knew, it was morning. It was Saturday, so I luxuriated in bed for half the day. Around noon, I finally got up to make some food, but when I picked up my phone, I saw that the company Slack was blowing up. It took me a while to piece it all together. Last night, I'd gotten blackout drunk. Ava had tried to take me home, but instead I'd grabbed her, held on for dear life, and started sobbing loudly. I'd apparently confessed that I'd been in love with her for years, but never had the guts to say anything because I didn't think I was good enough for her. Then I'd switched gears and accused her of being cold and heartless, of forgetting how close we used to be when we were kids. There were pictures. There were videos. I wanted to die of embarrassment. I knew I was a lightweight. One too many drinks and the next day was a total blank. A few of my closer work friends had helpfully DM'd videos. I watched in horror as I clung to Ava, bawling my eyes out like a heartbroken teenager. Ava, for her part, just stood there. Her face flushed, not pushing me away, just listening as a complex, unreadable emotion swam in her eyes. My toes were curling so hard in my slippers they were going to cramp. I immediately quit the company Slack channel, shut off my phone, and threw myself onto my bed to play dead. If it had just been between me and Ava, that would be one thing. But the entire company had seen it. The evidence was immortalized online. This was a whole new level of humiliation. What was I going to do? My mind raced, trying to come up with some way to spin this. How could I ever show my face at work again? I lay there until the afternoon, when my stomach's protests finally forced me to get up and find some food. Just then, the doorbell rang. I shuffled over. My hair a disaster. My face haggard. Social suicide was complete. My appearance didn't matter anymore. I opened the door to find Ava looking absolutely stunning. She was perfectly dressed, her hair meticulously styled, every inch of her radiating elegance. "Hello, beautiful Ms. Reed," I said, leaning wearily against the doorframe, fully embracing my pathetic state. "Hello, you mess," she replied, looking me up and down with a hint of disdain before breezing past me into my apartment. My parents weren't home. Ava saw the half-prepped ingredients on the kitchen counter and gave me a curious look. "You haven't eaten yet? Do you think I've had the appetite?" I shot back, spreading my hands in a gesture of helplessness. She took off her coat, put on an apron, and started cooking. I watched her graceful back and the way her hair cascaded down to her waist, and felt a pang of something complicated. If I just had the courage to tell her how I felt back then, would we be in this mess now? But my teenage crush had been so overwhelming. It had left me feeling perpetually insecure, too afraid to ever say the words out loud. Ava moved around the kitchen with an easy familiarity, quickly whipping up several dishes. She set the table with 2 plates. "Were you telling the truth last night?" she asked as we started to eat. I wasn't surprised she was staying. She'd always been comfortable at my house. "I don't remember a thing," I said, keeping my eyes glued to my plate, feigning ignorance of the Slack channel drama. "You know how I get. I got wasted once in college and had no idea how I even got home the next day." She was quiet for a long time. I risked a glance up and saw a whirlwind of emotions on her face. Then without a word, she went to the kitchen, found a bottle of my dad's good whiskey, and poured me a glass. "I'm not drinking." "Drink it," she commanded, her tone leaving no room for argument. I looked up at her, ready to refuse, but I saw that her eyes were red-rimmed. She held my gaze with a stubborn intensity, a look that made me feel like I'd just abandoned her at the altar. "You don't remember what you said to me on your 18th birthday either?" she asked, her voice trembling slightly. The question stunned me. What had I said to her on my birthday? I'd gotten drunk then, too. I don't remember, I admitted after a long, fruitless search of my memory. The words came out sounding weak and sour. "Look, if I said something awful to you that night, I'm sorry. But this is just what happens. I really don't know what I said. Just assume it was all drunken nonsense." The shattered look in her eyes made me panic. I grabbed the glass and took a huge gulp of whiskey, then quickly focused on my food to hide my discomfort. "You don't remember," she whispered, more to herself than to me. "So when you get drunk, you really don't remember anything?" Ava just stared at me, her expression blank. The whiskey was starting to hit me, and I had no idea how to handle the raw emotion on her face. I could only lift my glass again. What did I say? If you don't want to tell me, that's fine. Whatever it was, it's my fault. I'm sorry. As I drained the glass, Ava suddenly stood up, grabbed my arm, and pulled me toward the door. I didn't know where we were going, but seeing the broken look in her eyes, I didn't dare ask. My sluggish brain was still trying to figure out what I could have possibly said to make her like this. We got in the car. I remember arriving somewhere, Ava asking for my ID and me fumbling it out of my wallet. After that, everything went black. I woke up with a pounding headache. Realizing I was in Ava's bedroom, I swung my legs out of bed, needing a glass of water. When I walked into the living room, I found her parents and Ben all sitting there. Leo, you're awake. Go wash up. Breakfast is almost ready, Mrs. Reed called out warmly from the kitchen. I gave everyone an embarrassed smile and hurried to the bathroom. The reflection in the mirror was a wreck. I splashed cold water on my face, trying to clear my head and tame my disastrous hair. How did I end up at your house? I whispered to Ava at the breakfast table, leaning in while her father and brother were distracted. As guilty as I felt about her reaction yesterday, my first priority was to figure out what was going on. I told them we went and got our marriage license, she replied matter-of-factly. Then she reached into her purse and handed me a red certificate folder. She had a fake made. I took it, my eyes widening at the words, marriage certificate. My first thought was that it had to be a forgery. I didn't have my birth certificate or anything with me. There was no way we could have gotten a real license, even if I was wasted. I sat through the rest of the meal on pins and needles. The way Mr. and Mrs. Reed were looking at me made me feel like the world's biggest scumbag. I couldn't stop imagining the fallout when they found out their daughter and I had faked a marriage to fool them. The second we finished eating, I pulled Ava into her room. Her family watched us go with knowing, teasing smirks that made my face burn. Pretending to be dating was one thing, but a fake marriage license? Ava, what are we going to do when they find out? I asked, my voice laced with anxiety. She just stared at me for a long moment, then her face broke into a gentle smile. The way her eyes crinkled made my breath catch in my throat. You really don't remember anything, do you? She said, her voice soft and strange. I frowned, completely lost. On your 18th birthday, you told me you were in love with me. You told me to wait for you, and the next thing I know, you have a girlfriend. Her words hit me like a lightning strike. My ears were ringing, and it took a full minute for the meaning to sink in. You're saying I told you I loved you that night? Yes, you did. You total heartbreaker. The pieces finally clicked into place, and a bitter wave of regret washed over me. No wonder she'd become so cold. I had done something so incredibly cruel. I'm so sorry, I whispered, my head hanging in shame. Any other words would have been useless. Since you don't remember any of it, I suppose I can forgive you, she said, her tone shifting. But our old agreement still stands. You have to court me for real this time. And if you do a good job, maybe I'll be generous enough to forgive you. A delicate hand came to rest on my head, her voice filled with a tenderness I hadn't heard in years. I would have agreed to anything. I told this amazing girl to wait for me, and then I'd betrayed her. The fact that she was even considering forgiveness was a miracle. Can I? I asked. My voice cracked. The thought that I was the guy she talked about, the one who'd broken her heart, made me want to bang my head against the wall. This incredible woman had accepted my confession, had waited with hope, only for me to forget and move on. The pain I must have caused her. After 3 years of that hurt, she was still willing to give me a chance. A tidal wave of love and gratitude swelled in my chest, and all I wanted was to hold her and tell her how sorry I was. No, she said, wagging a perfectly manicured finger in front of my face. Her tone was teasing, almost giddy. I haven't forgiven you yet. But when she walked me to the door later, she hesitated for a moment before giving me a quick, gentle hug. Don't get any ideas, she whispered, the tips of her ears turning pink. This is a reward for me. Watching her try to be tough, I couldn't help but smile. I had wasted 3 years of her life. The moment the door closed, I turned and slapped myself across the face twice. Never again, Ava, I vowed. Never again. The next day, I went to work with a renewed sense of purpose. I dressed immaculately and was waiting for her by her parking spot with a bouquet of fiery red roses. When Ava saw me, her face lit up with a genuine joy I hadn't seen before. She knew this wasn't just an act anymore. We walked into the office together, drawing curious, gossiping stares from our colleagues. I ignored them. None of it mattered compared to the hurt I'd caused Ava. At my desk, I threw myself into my work, trying to take as much off her plate as possible. It was the least I could do. It was as if a switch had been flipped. I discovered I had a natural talent for business operations, and soon I was making her job significantly easier, but she didn't want me to burn myself out. "You're my assistant, not the COO," she'd mutter. "Stay in your lane." Of course, I never neglected my primary duties. I kept her coffee hot and her water cold, and I prepared her breakfast and lunch every day. I spent nearly my entire salary on little gifts for her, leaving almost nothing for myself. Ben soon discovered he could no longer drag me away for weekend gaming marathons. "Wow, get a wife and suddenly your brother-in-law doesn't exist anymore," he'd grumble. I paid him no mind. My focus was completely on making Ava happy. We went to every scenic spot and tourist trap in a 100-mile radius. I even took her to an amusement park, swallowing my pride because she mentioned she'd always wanted to go. Slowly, I watched the ice around her melt away, revealing the warm, caring woman I remembered from my childhood. And as she returned to her old self, I started making a plan. With the help of a few trusted colleagues, I began setting the stage. The next afternoon, just before quitting time, I told Ava I was heading to the restroom and slipped out of the office. The end of the day came and went, but I didn't return. She called my phone. It went straight to voicemail. She sent texts. They went unanswered. Annoyed, she finally left the office only to find the entire floor deserted. After a fruitless search, she called one of my co-conspirators and received a cryptic reply telling her to go outside the main entrance. As she stepped out of the building, a series of confetti cannons erupted, showering her in a rainbow of glittering paper. The entire plaza was filled with a sea of vibrant flowers, and in the center, I stood waiting with a bouquet of her favorite pink roses. On the giant digital billboard above, a slideshow of our memories was playing. Photos from our childhood, from the past few months, a reel of happy moments. "I've been secretly in love with you since we were teenagers," I said. My voice amplified just enough to be heard over the city noise, in front of all our colleagues and a crowd of curious onlookers. I was too scared to ever say it. And in my ignorance, I hurt you more than I can ever say. I don't know if you can forgive me, but I'm asking you to give me one more chance. Ava Reed, will you be my girlfriend and let me spend the rest of my life making it up to you? Ava's face flushed crimson, rivaling the roses. She gently took the bouquet from me and threw her arms around my neck, burying her face in my shoulder. Amid the cheers and applause, she whispered in my ear, "You idiot! You should have just proposed. We're already married. Why are you asking me to be your girlfriend?" "What? I thought that was fake," I whispered back, completely stunned. "Who said it was fake, dummy?" She mumbled into my chest. But I didn't have my birth certificate or anything. How did we get a license? They changed the law. You just need a valid ID now. So you're telling me that marriage certificate is real? Of course it is. I fell silent. The small box in my pocket suddenly felt heavy and inadequate, but I'd come this far. I pulled it out and opened it. "Ava, I know the timing is a little off now, but I picked this out for you. I hope you like it." She didn't take the necklace. Instead, she tilted her head, silently asking me to put it on her. As I clasped it around her neck, she pulled a small velvet box from her own purse and handed it to me. "You might not have been prepared," she said softly, "but I've been waiting for this day for a long time." My heart skipped a beat. I opened the box and my vision blurred when I saw the matching set of diamond wedding bands inside. What did I ever do to deserve this? I thought. All I knew was that I would spend the rest of my life protecting this woman, making up for the mistakes of my past. "Come on, let's go inside." My mind was a whirlwind of guilt, joy, and overwhelming love. The next thing I knew, Ava was pulling me into a hotel. Seeing her blushing as she led me into the room, it was hard to believe that just a couple of months ago, she wouldn't even give me the time of day. "Ava, I don't think this is—" "Shh, don't talk," she said, cutting me off. "We have a license. You're mine now, and I'm about to make up for lost time." Her warm lips silenced the rest of my protests, and that night I began to make good on my promise. 6 months later, we had a grand wedding. Our parents sat in the front row, beaming with joy. My best friend, now officially my brother-in-law, stood beside me as my best man. Blessed by our families and friends, our life together was perfect. 5 years later, in our home, our beautiful child was sound asleep in their room. Ava grabbed my hand and pulled me urgently toward our bedroom. Our little one is 2 now, she said with a mischievous grin. It's time we started working on number 2. I tried to pull back in mock horror.